Okay, we are going to demonstrate the invisible zipper and show you how to put one on a pillow or a lady's dress, skirt. Works great. But I first need to explain how it's different from a normal zipper. This is what a normal coil zipper looks like. Okay, you see the coils on the front side where the slider and pull tab are. On an invisible zipper, on the front side of it, you see the tape, of course, and you see the pull tab. That's all you see. It's because it's designed to curl the coil to the back side, and that's what makes it invisible. So because of that, we need to prep the zipper. So after you have your invisible zipper, you'll unzip it, you'll turn your iron to a warm setting, and turn the zipper tape wrong side up. The coil is curled, and we just want to get the iron on it, which I've already done for this one, and we are going to uncurl the coil and lightly press it just to relax the coil. You don't have to make it go flat, just enough to relax it a little bit. So that's how you prep the zipper. Now I'm going to introduce the invisible zipper foot. There are actually many different invisible zipper feet, but this one is my new favorite one. It's a snap-on foot. Has the letter Z right there. Here's the needle opening, and it has a little notch in the front. That's how you know it's the front. Then if you'll turn it to the back side, you'll see two little grooves. That is what makes this zipper foot work so nice, because the coil will be guided right into these grooves. When we do one side, the coil will be in this groove. When we do the other side, the coil will be in the opposite groove. Okay? Now, because that's a snap-on foot, we need to convert it to make it fit my Bernina machine. Because it's a snap-on foot, we need to, first of all, make it a low shank foot by using this little snap-on low shank foot adapter. Okay? Now we've made it a short shank foot, low shank foot. Now, because it's a Bernina foot, I have to add my Bernina adapter shank. Need to loosen this screw a little bit. And then the front of it is this part. And it slides down. Let's need to loosen it a little more. Right like that. Now we've created a Bernina invisible zipper foot. Anytime you put a new foot on your machine, especially if it's not made for your machine, you always want to check your needle position to make sure that you're not going to break your needle. And for this Bernina machine, we really want to try to have the needle be right in the middle, right behind the notch. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put this foot on. Get it all the way up on the post and then tighten it. And then check your needle, make sure it's not going to hit anything. I just put the needle down, back up again, because we want to swipe the thread underneath the foot and put the thread tails towards the back. Now we want the needle in the center, and then it will stay there for both sides. So just move your needle. Sometimes on some machines I have to move it 2 to the right. Sometimes I just move it 1 to the right. So just adjust that. I think on this machine we'll just do 1 to the right, and that looks good. Okay, now you need to prep your fabric. You have to decide when you want to do your seam finish. On pillows, I usually serge first before I do the zipper, because once you get the zipper on, you really can't put that underneath the serger. You could zigzag over the zipper tape and the raw edge, and that would be fine, but I wanted to do the serger, so I've already serged the raw edges. This is just strips of fabric for my sample, but yours would be probably a pillow or a dress back. Okay, we have to do one side at a time. And if this was for a pillow, you want a zipper length to go almost the full length, if not the full length, from seam line to seam line. Now, for the zipper, seam allowance, if we're doing a pillow and the seam allowance is a 1/2 inch, I just match my tape right to the edge of my fabric. If this was for a dress or skirt and my seam allowance was 5/8, then I need to offset my zipper 1/8 of an inch, so that when I stitch here I've got a 5/8 seam allowance instead of a 1/2 inch. So make sure you make that difference. Well, we're going to say that this is for a pillow. So we're going to put the tape right here. Now, you have to decide, do you want any of that tape in the seam allowance, or would you like the tape to be outside of the seam allowance of that top part of the pillow? So decide that. It's hard to get a nice pointy corner if you have any of the tape in the seam allowance. So I'm going to just move my tape down to a 1/2 inch from the top there. You would do this on a flat surface. Pin it on. The zipper is all the way open. Okay, now we're going to position it underneath the foot. For side one, we are going to have the coil under the left groove, okay? You want the needle closest to the coil. And I start just above the top stop. Your job is to make sure the coil is standing straight up as it feeds into the groove here. I'm going to go ahead and put my needle in the down position. I'm going to back stitch just a couple of stitches. Okay, take my pin out, and I'm ready to go. The foot does most of the work. You just have to guide the coil and make sure it's standing straight up. Try not to let your tape slip. Keep it nice and true to your fabric edge. You're not going to be able to get all the way down to the bottom. You're going to get to where the presser foot's going to hit the slider, then you'll stop and backstitch. Raise your needle, cut your thread tails. Side one is done. Now we'll close the zipper, check it out, see if we got close enough to the coil. Yes, we did. If you happen to see tape still showing, that means you didn't stitch close enough to the coil. It doesn't mean you have to unpick. It means your needle position just isn't quite right, so you could adjust that and re-stitch it. Okay, so we said this was a pillow. If this really was a pillow, we would have gone end to end, but my sample's a little bit longer. But we want to make sure our top and our bottom match up. So you want to do that with the zipper closed to start out with. So here's side two, and I say out loud, right side of zipper tape to right side of fabric. Lining it up, and I'll put a pin right there to start with. Now, sometimes the zipper, when it's sewn on, will pucker your fabric a little bit. Well, if it's going to do it to side one, it will also do it to side two. So keep the zipper closed, don't try to stretch anything. We'll line up the bottom here, and I'll put another pin in. Now I'll put the rest of the pins in once I've opened the zipper. This just makes sure that you're accurate, even top and bottom, and that right side is to right side. Now finish putting your pins in, and we're matching up to the edge here, since we're doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're ready to do side two. So our coil will be in the right groove this time. So open up your coil, start just right above the top stop. Needle down, a couple of back stitches. Take your pins out as you go, and then once again, your job is just to guide the coil, standing straight up. The foot will do the rest. pin came out. Once again, you'll have to stop when the presser foot hits the slider and backstitch. Then we'll cut those thread tails. And here's where students sometimes panic because it's twisted and they think, oh no, I sewed it wrong. But don't panic. If you've done right side to right side, it should work. So here's our fabric, right side up. We'll take the pull tab and we'll just zip it closed and see how it worked out. Okay, you know you've done a good job when you don't see any of the tape. It just looks like a seam. We're almost finished. We still need to finish the rest of the seam at the bottom, and because this is for a pillow, we will finish the seam at the top. If this was going to be for a skirt or for a dress, of course this would be the neckline or the waistband, so we would not stitch above there. Okay. We cannot use this foot for the next step, so we are going to switch the foot to the Bernina zipper foot. Okay, that will allow us to stitch really close. So before we put that on, we'll go ahead and pin. So we come to the bottom of our zipper. You've got a little zipper tail here. We do not want to stitch on the zipper tape now. It's important to pin. So we're just going to line up our two fabric layers. And I've got contrasting threads so that you can see that stitch a little bit better. Just going to put a pin right here where I hope to be stitching. When we put the foot on, the needle's going to be to the far right, and that will allow me to really stitch close and backstitch and without getting anything else in the way. Okay? Switch the foot. Put the needle to the far right. We'll put the zipper underneath and to the right of the foot. And I'm going to get my zipper foot as close as I can get to my stitching right there. And then I do a couple of other things. So here's one of my tips. I don't like sewing through my fingers, so I use a stylus, or I use just a seam ripper. It's going to hold that tape because the tape's going to want to curl and go like this. So you want to pull back on that. Now, I like to use both hands to guide this, but I have to backstitch. So I'm going to put the needle in the down position, and I'm going to put my backstitch on permanent backstitch. So I'm going to hit that twice. That way I'm hands-free. And I will do a couple of back stitches. I'm holding that seam allowance and zipper tape. And then I'll release the back stitch, still holding on to that zipper tape that wants to curl. And then we'll come straight. So you'd come to the end of your pillow, or if this was a dress, of course you would continue stitching all the way down, or you could stop and switch feet if you wanted to go back to the regular presser foot. Okay, and then of course you'd back stitch. But because this is a pillow, we are going to do the opposite side as well, because we want to finish the bottom and the top. So we'll come up to the top now and cut our thread tails. We're going to do the same thing that we did to the bottom, but we can't do it with that bulky slider in the way. So we do need to undo our zipper just a little bit to give us some room. Put your two coils together, but remember, we're not stitching through the zipper at all. So we're going to pin just our fabric layers together really close to where our seam started up here. And then we're going to do the same thing. Come, bring that foot snug up to where you previously stitched. Put the needle in the down position. Put it on permanent back stitch so you've got more control. I'm holding on to that seam allowance, so we'll back stitch a couple of stitches. Turn it off, and now go forward to the end and back stitch again. Okay, now you'd say you're finished, and you really are, but I do one more step. I like to anchor the zipper tape at the bottom. We didn't get to stitch the zipper all the way down, and this creates a little tail here. So it's nice to anchor the zipper tape to the seam allowance. You can backstitch if you want to. Just do it for about 1 inch. That will anchor it and help the zipper open and close a lot easier. And it won't curl on you. Now, because this is a pillow, we have a seam at the top and bottom, and with the zipper closed, you shouldn't be able to tell where the seam ended and the zipper began, and where the zipper ended and the seam began, except for the little pull tab. Okay, you've just done a beautiful